To learn how you can help, visit legion.org.
Where do my friends and other students find their voice? We find our voice through the performing arts, along with millions of other high school students. By expressing yourself in a role on stage, through an instrument, or at the debate podium, the performing arts give us freedom to find ourselves, to find our place. The stage is where I can play, perform, and compete with my friends.
Performing arts in your school is where creativity meets courage. Encourage the students in your life to find their voice through the performing arts. This message presented by the NFHS, where we encourage all students to play, perform, and compete together.
As a truck driver, I've learned how important road safety is. I know that large trucks need more time and room to stop. That's why I always hang back and follow other vehicles at a safe distance. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, try to remember to always give trucks extra space when you merge in front of them. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Proud to serve you since 1923. KFEQ.
We have high quality daycares, and this is very sad news that one individual who made a false claim about fraud that is happening in the daycares now engage everyone else to come and do this to us.
Yeah, there is nothing to see here, folks. Nothing. The expose of what's happening here. That's what's to blame. You have a journalist who takes video of what's actually taking place. You'd be like the CNN reporter who more interested in trying to take down an investigative journalist than actually massive fraud that's been playing out in the state of Minnesota with the daycare facilities. The manager of one of the facilities, one that was broken into, allegedly, just happened to know where the records were. Just one of the records. That's, who wouldn't break in to a daycare facility to get records? That's But again, nothing to see there, folks. Nothing at all. And as we say, actually, let's see. We got before I get back to the roadmap here for 2026, unprecedented success politically. Got Bob who wants to weigh in on this, on the Somali daycare scandal in Minnesota. Bob, right here in West Palm Beach, can't be too far away. Welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. How are you doing today?
All good, Bob. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Since when are daycares federally funded? I've got two twin girls that are registered in daycare, and we're paying $800 per child per month, and there's probably about 70 to 75 other parents paying the same, and that's what funds the daycare. So why are federal funds even being involved, legitimate or not, in the daycares?
Well, you just need to get yourself on a federal government program. That's where the issue comes down. Now, I hear what you're saying, Bob, and thank you for the call. So it's through DCF. We start talking about the government, the federal funding of these types of things. You have what is known as the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, and that is the lion's share of where this money comes in. To give you an idea, the most recent year, huge money. The federal government spent over $25 billion in these types of programs over the past years. One of the reasons, take a look at Minnesota, and you're like, hold on, this is not a particularly big state, and the estimates run as high as $8 billion in fraud. Like, how could that be possible in one not terribly big state? That goes back to 2018, and we'll see what the ball lands. Might not be that high, but how could could there be up to $8 billion in fraud in one state over the previous 7 years? Well, it's because if you take a look at the annualized spending just on these child care and early childhood education programs that are funded through the federal government, coming in at over $25 billion a year. And that is how. And you take a look at the accountability, you take a look at the fraud. I mean, look, there are so many reasons why it makes sense to cut the federal government, to have limited federal government. But this is one of the biggest right here, because what happens when you have all of these unaccountable agencies? You know, there are 430 federal government agencies. 430. So what I've always said is, I would love to get every single member of Congress together, put them in a room, take away their cell phones. Okay, so no internet access, give them a full day. So you get 500 folks together, or however many are not retired or dead or what have you at any given time. Get them all together. The 500 plus that would be there, and let them even converse amongst themselves. I'm fine with that. But no internet. And if even one member of Congress votes or can even name the government agency, then it stays. If even one person could just name the government agency, it would stay. How many of the 430 federal government agencies do you think would be gone, so? And that's kind of part of the bigger point, you know, because we recently went through the longest partial government shutdown in American history. I mean, had it not been for the issues we ended up having with air traffic control, for the most part, nobody noticed anything. And even then, I was doing analysis on that. You know, longest partial government shutdown in American history. You know what percentage of Americans even felt it at any point, any aspect of it? It only got up to about 27%. And a lot of that was on the travel side, along with the federal government employees themselves. And so even with the longest partial government shutdown in history, still didn't even get to a point where 70% of Americans, 7 in 10, had any idea what was happening if it hadn't been in the news. Gives you an idea about how bloated and ridiculous the federal government is. And my biggest lament about partial government shutdowns is that we haven't done more to try to make it permanent. But yeah, this is the biggest thing. We administering all of this money that is funneled by the federal government to states, then states that can be corrupt or unaccountable like Minnesota, and then down to whoever is supposed to be responsible for these programs that then administer it to the individual daycare facilities. That's how all that nonsense ends up going down. And of course, that's true of so many other programs, which is why we have so much fraud, and especially if we had all that COVID money that is involved. All right, so talking about the roadmap here for this midterm election year to be different than your typical midterm election, which means that the president's party gets waxed typically in those midterm elections, and specifically about how to not repeat the history we had in 2018 when President Trump was setting us up for all kinds of success, but eventually we're like, oh yeah, this is pretty darn good. Right before the pandemic hit, we're set up for even more success, as it will be felt progressively throughout the course of this year and then again next year. How not to take that for granted. Walking through a lot of the voter registration information, in addition to the polling information that's out there, and everything's been pointing in the same direction. Despite how a lot of the special elections went last year, which Democrats had really strong performances, relatively speaking, the problem was ultimately that people that voted for Trump didn't get out there and vote. And that's what this really gets down to, is not taking this stuff for granted. So, the last thing I left you with was that if you take a look at on a percentage basis, in states where we have voter registration information available, the changes that we saw last year. So this is after the results of the 2024 election cycle. Democrats lost 1.4% of their registered voters last year. Republicans added about 0.3% to the ranks. So that you net that out, and you have a near 2-point advantage in registered voters for Republicans over where we were this time a year ago. President Trump, his approval rating is 3 points higher than it was at the same point back in 2018. Very importantly, the generic ballot. Republicans performing 9 points better than Democrats at the same stage in 2018. Then you start taking a look at some of the individual states. So, mentioned that really good information only available